who better to talk to than someone who won one of those judgments against Trump? Shawn Crowley is a trial lawyer at Kaplan, Hecker and Fink. She was one of the attorneys who represented E. Jean Carroll, and she joins me now. I'm so grateful that you could make the time this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. And I did want to start.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure talking with you. Now, I wanted to start. Donald Trump was given this deadline of 1 month to post his bond, which I know you are very familiar with, and his latest case that he can appeal. I think for many of us, we're waiting around and thinking, why hasn't he done it yet? Is it a delay? Is it not a delay? So should we read anything into the fact that he hasn't done that yet?
It's hard to say. I think after the first trial, it didn't take that long for him to put up all $5 million of the judgment. So I suspect that he may be scrambling around trying to figure out how to get the cash to put it up. But we don't really know. He has a few weeks left to do it, and we are waiting to see what happens.
Now, his deposition as part of the New York City civil fraud suit that he said he had $400 million in cash, as I just outlined. That would, of course, not be enough to cover what he owes your client as well as the state of New York. So would it be lawful for others to pay the judgment on his behalf? What is possible? Because he's been doing that and paying his legal fees.
Yeah, it's complicated. It would be in some respects, as long as he discloses if he's raising money, as long as he's the one raising the money, and as long as he discloses what he is raising it for. He can't say that he's raising it for his presidential campaign and then use it to pay for a bond or for legal fees. But it would be lawful for him to raise it as long as people know what they're paying it for.
It's interesting because he's been doing that to pay for his legal fees, it seems. But what about a foreign entity? And I ask this because his son-in-law and others have really benefited from the Saudis. He, of course, has not been criticizing Vladimir Putin. I'm not asking you to necessarily speak to all of that, but could a foreign entity pay for his money he owes? Would it be within the bounds of the law?
Right. Yeah. And I will profess to not be an expert in this area, but I think that he could raise the money. He could, to secure a bond, he has to basically get a lender who has enough faith in his ability to pay it back, that they will give him the money to pay the bond. I suspect, again, that he could potentially get a foreign entity to pay that, but it all comes down to disclosures. It all comes down to being truthful about what the money is going to and who's paying it.
He doesn't always care about who is paying it. Well, this will be an interesting thing to watch. We will see. Okay, so now as part of the judgments over the past couple of weeks, there's this court-appointed monitor of the Trump Organization. Do you anticipate that is a person you will now be dealing with in terms of the payment of E. Jean Carroll's judgment? Is that who you're engaging with?
We have not done that yet. And, I think that we're still trying to figure out what to do if he doesn't pay the bond in the next couple weeks, what our options are. We are looking into that. And, we will take all appropriate steps that we need to ensure that this money is here and that it goes to E. Jean either, now, if we have to start enforcing, or after the appeal has played out.
So it is coming up in a couple of weeks, as you referenced. It's early March. What are your options if he doesn't pay the bond or if he doesn't pay the total of what he owes E. Jean Carroll? Those seem to be his options. What can you do if he doesn't?
We can start taking steps to actually enforce the judgment, which means going to the court and asking for an order for us to start attaching assets and making sure that we get the money to pay the full amount of the judgment.
As in, you decide he's not paying it, so we're going to take steps to liquidate some of his assets to pay what she's owed.
We would have to ask the court to do that, but that's what we're looking into, all the options to make sure. I mean, this money has to be paid. And if he's not able to secure a bond or pay the full amount to the court, then we will take steps to make sure that the judgment's enforced.
And he has real estate out there, as we all know. Over the weekend, he certainly does have a lot of them, although he's not responsible for the New York City skyline, I think we can say. Over the weekend, it seemed like Trump kind of came awfully, I'm not a lawyer, but he came awfully close to defaming your client again. So let's just listen to that, and I just want to talk about it on the other side.
We haven't done anything wrong. We've done nothing wrong. This last case is, we haven't done anything wrong. How about the one 2 weeks ago? A woman, I'm saying, who the hell is she? Who is the woman? It's so unfair what's happening in our country. Our court system is a mess.
So I'm just going to restate for everyone. Trump knows exactly who your client is. He was found liable for sexually abusing her and then defaming her by lying about it. Do you watch these, and could this warrant a third suit as you watch that?
We certainly watch them. It's hard not to. Every time Donald Trump speaks, I think, as we said at trial many times, he has the biggest megaphone in the world. And so everyone hears them, including us and including our client, E. Jean Carroll. And as you said, what he said was absolutely a lie. 2 unanimous federal juries have found that not only did Trump know who E. Jean was, he sexually assaulted her. And lied about it repeatedly. Everything he's said about her over the last 5 years has been a lie and has been defamatory. So we're watching, we're listening. We had really hoped that, as I think the jury found, that $83 million would maybe be enough to convince him to keep E. Jean Carroll's name out of his mouth. Apparently, he showed us this weekend that he really cannot control himself, and that maybe it wasn't. But we'll see what happens as this continues to play up.
You're watching them. I'm sorry, you have to watch all of these, just like the rest of us do. Sean Crowley, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really enjoyed having you on our show.